Hello, so today I'm going to be reviewing all of the books that I read in February, and it is long overdue. As I'll be filming this, it is the 18th of March. I am going to try and get this edited and uploaded as swiftly as I can because I am long overdue telling you about all of the books that I read in February. I read 10 books in total. 2 of those were books that I read for work. On top of that, there were another 3 young adult books. And then there were 5 books for adults, which includes 1 poetry book. This month has just escaped me. It has been so busy. There's been so much going on. The month is going so quickly. Today has been like the sunniest day that we have had in London all year. It feels like spring hath sprung. Although inevitably this is just like a rogue sunny day that will lull us all into a false sense of security and then the rain will come back. But it has really highlighted to me that the days keep coming and they don't stop coming. It is very lame to be like shocked by the passage of time, but like I am. We're almost a quarter of the way through the year. Anyway, we are not here for existential crises. We are here to talk about books. The first of which is Half His Age by Jeanette McCurdy. So I pre-ordered this. It was one of my most anticipated reads for the year from a kind of just curiosity perspective. I didn't have like hugely high expectations going into it, despite the fact that I really got so much value out of and really enjoyed is perhaps the wrong word, but enjoyed Jeanette McCurdy's memoir, I'm Glad My Mom Died. That was a very personal memoir about Jeanette's experiences being a child celebrity or child star, the toll that took on her mental health, how she was mistreated, the turbulent relationship that she had with her mother. And I don't think it's unfair to say that some of those personal experiences do inform her debut fiction novel as well. But if I had to sum up this novel, it is like if Love Lessons by Jacqueline Wilson became extremely horny, you would get this book. This is a story of a 17-year-old girl in America being groomed by her high school English teacher. I think what Jeanette McCurdy does impressively in this book is really put you in the shoes of like a 17-year-old and how the perspective of our protagonist is so warped and finds herself in situations with this substantially older man, this authority figure, where in many ways she feels like she is getting what she wants. She feels like everything that is happening is something that she has pursued and she has signed up for. I think she is adventurously exploring her sexuality. Of course, when you come to this with the perspective of being an adult reader, you can see what is really happening, that she is being groomed. And I certainly felt that reading it as a woman who once, found herself in situations where she may have felt like she was empowered in getting what she wanted, but was actually maybe very uncomfortable. I connected with that in a way. I largely felt myself becoming just really uncomfortable reading the sexual scenes of this like 17-year-old kid. Perhaps that's the point. Maybe you're meant to feel uncomfortable, but I don't feel like there was enough light and shade or balance when it comes to really getting some depth to this young person's feelings. On the one hand, yes, she does a good job of putting you back in the shoes of a 17-year-old. However, it was a 17-year-old that didn't possess really any critical thought around what was going on. And 2 things can be true at the same time. A 17-year-old can be very naive and easily manipulated and have their feelings played with. However, they are also capable of self-reflection. I kind of just wish the author had paid as much attention to the complexity of this teenager's feelings as they did to the sexual acts that they were performing. The book was also incredibly repetitive, which I do think was an intentional choice. I do think there was a decision made to show how mundane this teenager's life was and the self-sabotaging patterns that they fall into, but it ultimately meant that it ended up being quite a boring read as you read about them doing the same thing over and over again, the same damaging behavior. There were compelling things about this book, like the mother-daughter relationship, I think was something that I was interested in and kind of wanted more of. I am really glad that I read this book. I do think I've really enjoyed being part of the conversation because so many people have been reading this book at the minute and I've had some really good conversations about it. I'm very glad I read it, but like not wholly positive thoughts on it. I also read Uncharmed by Lucy Jane Wood. So this is not a sequel to Lucy Jane Wood's debut novel Rewitched, which was so popular last year, but it is set in like the same magical world and we are following a different witch. What I loved about Rewitched was it was really cozy fantasy. I am not like a big epic fantasy, like complicated magical systems person, but I do like some cozy fantasy. So these books really like tick some boxes for me. This is about Annie, who is a magical witch that owns a bakery in London, and she is a lover of all things sweet and all things pink. This is a very unashamedly girly, pink, glittery book. I am 100% there for it. I also love baking in books, and there was some very excellent food writing in this book. However, Annie's life is catapulted into chaos when she is tasked by her coven to take care of a troublesome teenage witch. Stubborn Maeve is very different from Annie, and they don't quite hit it off straight away, nor do they hit it off with Hal, who is the owner of their temporary lodgings, and the three of them form this unlikely trio that is akin to like a found family. There is a romance that develops between Annie and Hal, which I did really enjoy. What I really loved about it was their respective relationships with this troubled teen, how they nurture and mentor her in different ways, how they butt heads with her, and how they begin to feel very protective over Maeve when she begins to show signs of extraordinary powers. As I said, this is exactly the kind of fantasy that I do really enjoy. And I actually enjoyed this one even more than I enjoyed Rewitched. I think, you know, the aesthetic of it was something that I really enjoyed. All of those baking elements, the found family aspects, they're all things that I absolutely loved. But I also found that this book was so beautifully crafted on a line level, like so many really rich descriptions, so many kind of beautiful turns of phrases that I really appreciated. There is a third book coming from Lucy Jane Wood later this year, and I will definitely be reading it. I also read So Thrilled for You by Holly Bourne. I have read many Holly Bourne books over the years. In fact, there will be another one in this very wrap up. And So Thrilled for You is her latest adult novel. It's told from 4 different perspectives of a group of 4 friends. And from the beginning of this novel, we know the setup. These 4 friends are at the baby shower for one of the girls in the group. And this baby shower has ended in a disaster, an out of control fire. And we understand that something has obviously gone wrong here. One of the women is involved in this in some way. We then go back to the beginning of the day. We follow these 4 women in the lead up to the baby shower, what happens there, the complicated feelings and the relationships that they have amongst each other, and particularly the complicated feelings that they all feel around motherhood, and how that is all informed by their very different experiences around the ideas and realities of being a mother. Also get snippets of them being interviewed by the police or newspaper articles that are helping us build up a bigger picture of what has gone on this day. The lead up to finding out what happened, what the origin of this disastrous blaze was, is a compelling and thrilling like plot thread. I wasn't hugely surprised by the reveal of what happened. That doesn't really bother me because I do feel like that plot thread, that plot device, was a vehicle to carry a story that is about how motherhood can be so divisive for women, how it can become kind of all-consuming as you enter your 30s, how it really is life-changing whether you decide to become a mother or not, how sometimes you don't get to make that decision. These kind of thoughts and conversations are something that is coming up in my own personal life so much now as I am in my 3rd decade. I haven't quite reached the point where like everyone I know is getting married and having babies, but like it's starting to happen. So I found it very interesting to hear about these 4 different women's perspectives as I begin to enter into that world. I will say if you are pregnant, I'm not sure how much I would recommend reading this. I do have pregnant friends who were pregnant when they read this book, and some of them hated it and had to put it down, and some of them just found it very validating and like did really enjoy it. There is one like birth scene that I really struggled to read. So if I'm struggling to read it as someone who is like thinking about maybe being pregnant one day in the future, I really don't think I would have been able to read it like if I was actually pregnant. So be aware of that going into the book. But in saying all of that, I definitely highly recommend this. I mean, I recommend absolutely everything that Holly Bourne writes. I think she does a phenomenal job of articulating something that is so broad and complicated and different from individual to individual, with so much nuance and respect for every single differing perspective. I also love novels that are set in like sweltering heat. I just think it adds so much atmosphere to a novel. So this had that as well. So I really liked that. I read Angels by Marian Keyes. This is part of the Walsh Sisters series. All of the books in this series can be read independently, but I have been reading them in order. And this time we are following Maggie, who has always been seen as the more plain, reliable, steady one in the family amongst her more chaotic sisters. We follow her feeling quite down on herself, tired, she's sad, and then within the space of a few days, she ends up losing her job and leaving her husband. Spends a few days back at the Walsh family home before heading off to America, where she is visiting her friend Emily in Los Angeles, and she finds herself mixing with a whole bunch of people that she never thought she would mix with and experiencing things that she never imagined that she would. She finds herself brushing shoulders with people from the TV industry, people who have had very different life experiences from her, people who live in very different ways to her. And she enters into this period of attempted experimentation and trying to find herself. I will say that this is the first Marian Keyes book I have read where I found the length of it bothersome. I found the beginning of the novel really immersive and I was really invested in Maggie, and certainly as we reach the latter portion of the novel I found myself getting reinvested in her story. But for much of the middle it felt quite meandering, as to be honest, as Maggie herself kind of meanders through her life. And ultimately we follow Maggie realizing that she didn't miss out on things by, not being as adventurous or experimental in her younger days. Has this kind of albatross around her neck at all times where she feels like she has missed out on some sort of great adventure by being settled. I actually really loved what this novel got across in terms of like, it's okay to like what you like and have a settled life and just enjoy the everyday. You are not someone who is like a crazy party person. You haven't missed out on anything, like if it's not for you. We've already spoken about motherhood a little bit in relation to the previous book, but I will also say that if you are experiencing any kind of difficult feelings around abortion and miscarriage, I would be aware of that going into this book. But I do think there was kind of so much value to what the author got across about those experiences through Maggie's life. And by extension, how it explores marriage and the complexities of marriage and how it is a partnership and how people aren't always perfect partners, but sometimes it is worth prioritizing the partnership and really kind of asking yourself what is more important, the fight or the relationship. So I did really like this one, but it is not my favorite Marian Keyes book. The poetry book I read was Nobody Asked for This by Charlie Cox. So there are actually 3 different poetry collections bound up in this edition. So She Must Be Mad is Charlie Cox's debut collection, and I read that many years ago and reread it when I read this book, which also includes her collection Validate Me and 70 new poems that make up Nobody Asked for This. The poems largely explore themes of young womanhood, mental health, relationships. It paints a complex picture of the poet's experiences of having bipolar disorder, and I'd largely categorize these poems as attempting to be relatable, as personal writing, efforts of personal connection between the poet and the reader. Essentially, it is an exploration of growing up and young womanhood. Some poems I thought were stronger than others. I certainly felt like some were kind of filler poems for me. There were definitely some diamonds among quite a bit of rough, I would say. Like the poems I loved, I completely adored. I actually wish that I had tabbed the ones that I really liked, so I might go back and try and, mark the ones that I liked in some way. I also read 3 young adult books, so we'll head back to Holly Bourne because I read The Yearbook. I actually listened to this one on audio while I was playing Disney Dreamlight Valley, so I really associate anytime I see this book with riding my horse on Disney Dreamlight Valley. This is about Paige, who has a very complicated home life, particularly because of her father, who, to put it quite frankly, is very abusive. He fosters an environment of fear amongst his wife, his daughter, and seems to have this golden boy idea of his son who has gone on to university. The way he talks about his son is as if he is completely perfect, and he is completely horrible to his wife and his daughter Paige. Because of the environment that she has grown up in, Paige has become very quiet and often finds herself seeking refuge amongst the pages of books. And through some very cute exchanges in the margin of her library books, she ends up meeting a teenage boy. The relationship that unfolds between the pair of them, that begins as friendship and of course blossoms into something more, is so lovely. Like, you're really just following these two teenagers be dorks together, not quite sure how to navigate their relationships, trying their best. The blurb doesn't really allude to any of that, and the title of the book signifies another plot point far more significantly, and that is the creation of the school yearbook. So Paige is someone that has been very involved with her school newspaper, and when it comes to creating the yearbook, a number of the popular girls have been brought in on this project, and there was a real association with these popular girls as being mean girls, and they are taking over the yearbook and they have their own agenda that they're trying to push with it, and Paige is really rallying against that and trying to expose the secrets that these popular girls have. However, I was not particularly interested in that. I was really invested in her relationship with this boy and how alongside each other they began to understand their feelings and how they supported each other through their difficult circumstances in their lives beyond their relationship. I found the relationship that Paige has with her auntie to be really, really lovely. Even the relationship that she has with her older brother, I was more interested in than this kind of yearbook situation at the school. Overall, I really, really liked this. I do think, the yearbook setup is kind of what you needed to just build the rest of the plot around. But really what I loved about this was all those different familial, friendship and romantic relationships that Paige has. I also read Solo by Grania O'Brien. So you guys know I love a book by an Irish author written in verse, and that is what this book is, and I had a fantastic time with it. We are following Daisy, whose first love has always been music, and her second love was a boy named David, and as many teenagers do, when she experienced that first romantic love, she became really infatuated with this person and it really took over her life. When that relationship then ends, she is completely devastated to the point where she is giving up on her first love of music. She is returning to school for her final year with her life in what feels like ruins for her. She is completely heartbroken. She's not able to focus at school. She's not able to focus on her music. She has been betrayed by her former best friend. And then at home, her father is dealing with a very difficult illness and her whole family are dealing with that illness. She has been betrayed by a former best friend, and meanwhile at home, her father is suffering from a very difficult illness, and that is having impacts on the entire wider family. Daisy finds herself feeling completely isolated, and because of that verse storytelling format, you are so in her head, you are so with her, following her emotions very intimately. And I really connected with that. How heightened emotions are when you are navigating them for the very first time as a teenager, those friendship breakdowns, your very first romantic relationship ending, they are completely devastating. And I obviously felt so much empathy for Daisy in how she feels about her father becoming unwell. Daisy is a very difficult person in this time. She's a character that is crafted with nuance, where you see her flaws, you see where she is being unreasonable while simultaneously she's being misunderstood. And does that not just entirely encapsulate what it's like to be a teenager? Really got a lot out of this one. I also read Wish You Were Her by Elle McNichol, and this one was a lot of fun. I have read quite a few Elle McNichol books over the years, and I do always really enjoy them, whether that is her middle grade or her young adult like this one. She also has an adult book coming out later in the year, which I'm excited to read. This is about a teenage actress named Allegra who has her star on the rise. She is becoming more and more famous, but she decides that she needs to escape from the spotlight, so heads to the remote town where her dad lives to help out with the summer literary festival that he runs in conjunction with his bookshop. While she is there, she meets two different teenage boys that are working in the bookshop, and she's pretty sure that she has been exchanging pretty flirty emails with one of them, although it might not be the one that she is expecting. So there's a bit of an element of like mistaken identity, very like slight love triangle, and it's very entertaining to see her and the boy bookseller that she is exchanging these flirty emails with just completely misunderstand each other and get the wrong end of the stick so often. You know, that's partially because of, you know, how they interpret certain situations, but also just like the comedy of not knowing who each other is. What I really love about all of Elle McNichol's books is the representation of neurodiversity, specifically teenagers who are autistic. These characters are informed by the author's own experiences, but in no way lean into any stereotypes around autistic people. I also loved the like celebrity normal person dynamic as well. And of course, if you love bookshops, this is packed full of good bookshop and summer literary festival content, and has just like the appropriate amount of like chemistry for a teenage audience as well. I really liked this one. And very quickly, the two books that I read for work were Text We Never Sent by G. Forsyth Reed and Skandar and the Secret Element by A.F. Stedman, which is a World Book Day book. There we have it. They are all of the books that I read in February. If you have read any of these books and want to share your thoughts in a comment down below, please do. Or if I've piqued your interest in any of them, let me know as well. In honor of Allegra's amazing sunglasses and the fact that today is a very sunny day, although the sun is starting to set now, could you leave me a sunglasses emoji if you would like to let me know you're here? I am currently having a really brilliant reading month because, of course, we are in the midst of the Irish Readathon, so I've been reading lots of really great stuff. Maybe not as many books as I would have liked, but I've been enjoying everything that I've been reading, so that is more important. That is it for me today. I hope you're well, and I'll speak to you in my next video.